Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, Professor Houston. I think as you heard in Professor Houston's speech, it is really both an honor and a real treat to have Minister Chan grace us this morning. I think probably most of you here in the room maybe see him as your boss, I think in his role as the Minister of Education. But really, he has an illustrious career across a whole range of departments, as well as in the Singapore Armed Forces. So when I chatted with Minister Chan ahead of this to say, look, there's a focus on AI and education, and he told me, look, you can ask me anything. And so I'm going to take that opportunity because, as we talk about economic policy, as this is the Singapore Economic Policy Forum, and I think as a couple of the opening addresses talked about, we cannot talk about policy, I think, in Singapore without considering the global context. And so maybe I'd like to kick off on that area first. Singapore, of course, literally is an island, but we really thrive on a lot of our connections with the rest of the world. But as we know, the global backdrop is kind of increasingly fractious. We have what has been going on for a few years in terms of kind of a competition, a conflict between US and China. But on top of that, we also have actual hot wars happening in the Middle East and in Ukraine. So in some of these contexts, there is a case to be made of so-called middle powers, that this is the time for middle powers to shine. But of course, Singapore, we're a small country. Some would say we don't have skin in the game. But yet, this is really a crucial issue for us. So maybe I'll start with that big question of how do you see Singapore's role in this kind of increasingly chaotic geopolitical world?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Prakash, for that to kick us off on that. Well, the way I look at it is this. There are two parts to the question. So why is all this happening? And then what can we do about it as a small country? So perhaps let me start with why all this is happening. We talk about deglobalization, we talk about inflation and many other economic challenges compounded by the geopolitical challenges. And maybe I would say that part of the geopolitical challenges are also brought about, intertwined, if you like, by the economic challenges. I usually start off from this premise that today what we are seeing is a confluence of factors that exacerbate the domestic uncertainties and anxieties. You have disruptive technological changes, you have hyper-connectivity, and very importantly, you have hyper-competition. You have a new era where the world is more tightly connected and intertwined than ever before. This creates a lot of new opportunities, but this also creates a lot of competition. And when you have such significant competition, as all economic students will know, it requires significant domestic adjustments. Domestic adjustments that requires policies to help people to adjust, to keep pace, and then to share the fruits of labor. Without the policies to help people adjust, keep pace, and share the fruits of labor, the domestic divide will be accentuated. And this will heighten anxieties and aggravate many of the fault lines that existed. And then you have perhaps people coming forward, politicians coming forward, to offer simplistic, populist, but perhaps economically unhelpful solutions. And many of these are what we call beggar thy neighbor policies. Protectionism, isolationism, thinking that these short-term measures will help people to tide over the more fundamental challenges of making those long-term adjustments. And once you get into that funk, you have less space for international collaboration. Because without domestic confidence, coherence, and policy consistency, we can't have international collaboration. And without international collaboration, we will then have the fragmentation of the global economic order. Then we get into a vicious cycle where we have more beggar thy neighbor policies, the rise of protectionism, the fragmentation of the global economic order, which must inevitably reduce the growth potential of the global economy. So growth is likely to be slower than otherwise, and it becomes harder for us to achieve growth, harder for us to redistribute the fruits of growth within the domestic economy. So now we are in a vicious cycle. And that is why in Singapore we spend so much effort in education, not just the foundational education, but lifelong education, CET, Skills Future. And that is to help make sure that everyone can keep pace. And we will use policy levers to make sure that the fruits of our growth are distributed. So that allows us to have the confidence to want to continue to collaborate. That allows us the space to say that everyone working together in the international economy is better than a fragmented global economy. Then the next part of your question is, so what can we do? While we can do this, not everyone else in the world might agree to do this or have the ability to do this. But I think there are still some things that we can do. First, we can work with like-minded partners. And you use the term middle powers, whether it's medium powers or others, I think all of us have the agency and the responsibility to try and strive for a more integrated global economic environment rather than a fragmented environment. You mentioned about the contest between the US and China. Now, even if we add the US and China GDP together, depending on which measure you use, PPP or otherwise, they are perhaps 1/4 to 1/3 of the global economy. That means that there's another 2/3 of the global economy that must have the agency and responsibility to say that we don't want to end up being fragmented along this type of lines. That there are opportunities for us to want to work together and can work together in order for us to have that global integrated economic environment for us to have a better chance to achieve the growth that we want. So I think we can do that. So this is why Singapore works very closely with many other like-minded countries to continue to try to have a more integrated system. Examples of this includes what we have done more recently beyond the traditional suite of free trade agreements, including the RCEP that I was involved in. But we also have a new generation of what we call the Digital Economic Partnership Agreements that allows us to create the necessary new rules for the new global environment in order for us to work together. So I think we have to keep exploring new avenues of collaboration with like-minded partners. And there are like-minded partners who will not want to end up choosing sides and fragmenting the global economy. The second thing that I think we need to do is to work with what I call like-minded companies. Today, many of the large corporations have what they call the GDP bigger than many other nationals' GDP. And they play a significant role in championing the cause for us to want to work together. So for example, many of the digital platform economies, their interest will be for a more integrated global economic system, freer flow of data with safeguards. So there are partners beyond countries that we can we can and need to work together, global companies that champion this type of rule-based system. The third thing, I think in order for us to do anything, for us to be taken seriously, of course, Singapore must continue to be successful. Nobody really pay very much attention to countries that are not so successful. So we need to make sure that we earn our keep by constantly reinventing our value propositions for people to want to work with us. So I learned this, I think it was Joseph Liao who said this. Instead of asking which side should we choose, we should ask the question, how do we make people choose us instead as a partner of choice? And I think there are things that we can do to illustrate what this new policy environment can be. In Singapore, if you look at it, how do we earn our keep? We distinguish ourselves on the basis of what I call man-made competitive advantages. Other people have natural competitive advantages, natural resources, humans, population, so on and so forth. But for us, we need to create a lot of man-made competitive advantages. This includes policy consistency, the rule of law, protection of intellectual property, the ability for people to mobilize capital, aggregate talent, protect intellectual property. All these are man-made advantages that we can have control on. And this, I think, are things that will help us to put ourselves in good stead for people to want to work with us, for us to earn our keep, for our voices to be heard, so that in a fragmenting economy, we can always play the role of the integrator. The more the world threatens to fragment, the greater the need for players like Singapore who can play the role of an integrator, a bridge to bring people together. Because I think global corporations, they want an environment that's more integrated rather than more fragmented.
No, thank you very much, Minister. I think it has been said before that at its core, foreign policy is really domestic policy. And I think a lot of what you said, trying to understand actually the source of where a lot of these tensions come from is really in how domestic systems are responding to some of these external threats. Maybe I want to bring it a bit to domestically. I think that there have been polls in the past which have been interesting in the sense that Singapore is one of the few economies where, when asked, is globalization a good force for society, usually more people say yes than no, as opposed to some of the other countries, precisely for the reasons I think that you said, that the spoils, or rather the gains from trade, have not been widely shared. But I think the kind of theme for this year's Singapore Economic Policy Forum is kind of opportunity amidst challenges, right? And so I think there is a concern that about the resiliency of the society. You are seeing some of the similar challenges, I think, as you were talking about, that have afflicted other countries. You are seeing kind of technology which also maybe makes people a little bit more anxious with regards to availability of jobs in the future. So kind of, both in your portfolio in the Education Ministry, but also kind of as a member of the cabinet, how do you think about this aspect? How do you think about, I think maybe precisely on that last point, how do you make sure that we ourselves remain successful through this period?
So the fundamental point is what we have discussed. How do we help our people to keep pace so that they can continue and will continue to support integration? Because in other countries, as we have noticed, when people fall behind, they have no stake in that globalization. They have no stake in trade and so forth. So one of the fundamental things that we do and we hope to share with others is that it's not about tariffs or any of these rules that try to throw sand into the wheels, but in order to stop the disruption. The real issue is how do we help our people keep pace? And that is why we have to make a very important shift that we have started perhaps 10 years ago with Skills Future. It is not enough to just talk about the basic foundational education system for the first 15 years. Instead, we need to focus our minds and ask ourselves, how do we help our people to compete in the next 50 years? How do we help them to stay relevant in the next 50 years beyond their time in school? So if you look at how we have done our education and training system, when we first started our journey in 1965, we spent a lot of time, effort, and resources to level up the basic education system, the foundational education system. And by many measures, I think we have done not too badly. Then the next step, we went into the foundational years because we come to understand that the early years are very important to prepare the children with the right social-emotional dispositions to commence learning. Then the third phase of our education and training journey was the skills future. We are investing more and more effort on this part because we don't believe that the first 15 years will be sufficient in itself. Instead, we must couple that with regular training, regular upskilling for our people throughout their life. So in MOE, if you look at the mission of MOE, every year we have close to 500,000 of students in our school system. 500,000. That is only one part of our mission. But every year, we have to train another 500,000 of adult learners. What do I mean by that, and how do I get that number? My rough back of envelope calculation is this. We have a 2.5 million workforce. On average nowadays, people stay in the same job for 5 years. And that's pretty long. And even if they stay in the same job, chances are that they will do different things in the same job. It's just like us having to upgrade our iOS every other day, right, in a smartphone. So if you take a back of envelope calculation, that means that maybe every year, 20% of our people may be in a new job or in the same job doing new things. Then the question is, how do you help them to upgrade themselves? So 1/5 of 2.5 million is another 500,000. So our target is to make sure that we can upskill at least 500,000 people every year. This may not be a year-long program, this may not be a full qualification program, but this can be various stackable modules that allows them to have just-in-time skills upgrading. And then they can continue to feel that they are keeping pace, they maintain their relevance and competitiveness in the labor market. So this is one part that I think we must do to make sure that we focus on helping our people upskill and maintain their relevance in the labor market. The other part that we must do is through our various fiscal measures to redistribute some of the fruits of growth. And this, every country, every economy has to do it. And then we must have that social compact to say that all of us are in this together. When Singapore does well, we want everyone to benefit from this. Perhaps not equally, and perhaps too hard to say that everybody will benefit equally, but equitably. Everyone who puts in the effort, who tries, we will want to make sure that they can progress together. So these policies manifest themselves from how we help people in education, healthcare, transport, housing, and so on and so forth. And this is why, as part of the Refresh Social Compact, we have come up with a slew of policies to make sure that the fruits of our growth is distributed equitably to everyone. But this also requires a social compact from everyone to say that we will all chip in our part to help everyone comes along. So that we can continue to maintain this dream, this ethos that so long as you are born in Singapore, you will always have the best opportunities to fulfill your potential, to realize your potential, and to do justice to what you are gifted in. So I think these two parts are important. Helping our people to remain relevant so that they can take care of themselves, take care of their family, and yet at the same time, having done that, we must continue to look at policies to make sure that everybody moves along pretty much together.
Oh, thank you very much, Minister. I think very kind of a coherent package. I think one thing Minister told me ahead of this is also that he really wants to hear from everyone in the room. So think about a question, and as he has said, you can ask him anything. This is really a great privilege. While you're all thinking about your question, maybe I will bring it back to this issue of AI and education, which I think has been talked about. In kind of preparation for this, I read through a lot of your speeches on this subject. I think really a lot of insights there. I think one thing that you mentioned was, I think, breaking down different stages of how a student acquires information. So discovery, digesting, and discerning, and how, at least for some of these, maybe discovering new information, digesting new information, actually AI can be quite beneficial. But there is also this phrase that has been around, I think, at least for the past 10 years or so. It's called cognitive outsourcing, right? Where basically you're taking these kinds of basic cognitive functions, and instead of you doing it yourself, you're kind of, passing it on to someone else. I wonder how you think about maybe younger kids as they just start on the process of education, learning knowledge. Is there something lost when we outsource these two processes, like discovering new information or even digesting new information, to ChatGPT, Gemini, Cloud, what have you? Is there something lost in that process of actually finding or discovering new information yourself?
Well, my short answer is that there will be something lost only if we don't evolve our teaching and learning methods. With every new technology, it comes with new opportunities and challenges. The question is, how do we adapt the new technologies to our use? Let me start off with some of the opportunities that we have with this new technology. And I don't mean just AI. It includes data, the science of learning, data science and the science of learning. What are some of these new opportunities that I always see tremendous potential? And I would say that if I were to summarize the new opportunities, it allows us to transcend the traditional mass education model of teaching to the average. Instead, it allows us to move to a world of mass customization. I've always said that there's a trilemma in mass education. We try to achieve three things: quality at scale, proliferation at speed, and affordability in cost. A trilemma. Trilemma meaning that most education systems can get 2 out of 3 at best. If you have quality and you are fast, chances are not very, very cheap. If you have quality and you are affordable, chances you can't scale. You can't be fast. And if you are fast and you are affordable, chances are quality not so high. But today, with technology like AI, data science, and the science of learning, you can actually break this trilemma to allow us to achieve mass customization, or what we euphemistically call the pedagogy of one. Just like in medicine, you produce the batch of one. How do you mass customize to the individual? And today you can, because looking at the learning needs of the children, and if you have adaptive learning system, you can mass customize at affordable prices for each and every individual to truly bring out the best in everyone. So you transcend the teaching to the average problem. So that's the opportunity. But there are also risks, like what you mentioned. What if you start without the strong foundations and people start to outsource the cognitive development? And this is where our teaching pedagogies must evolve in tandem with technology. And this is the work that in MOE, many of the people are looking at it. So we don't just adopt or a technology mindlessly, but we look at how we adapt the technology, apply it at the appropriate level, with appropriate dosage, if you like. So to just give an example, we believe that for the very young in the primary school, especially the lower primary school, before we talk about the high tech, we need to talk about the high touch. They need to develop that social emotional foundations, that self-regulation, that discipline that's required for them to use the high tech. They need to develop the skills to interact with their peers and to ask that all this social emotional foundation is as important as the foundation in language and mathematics and logical thinking. So you need to establish that foundation. Now, upon that foundation, then we ask ourselves, how do you evolve our methods of teaching and learning? The next thing that we need to do is to tell ourselves that we need to help our children to distill, discern, and discover. Why do I say distill, discern, and discover? Because today, knowledge is commoditized. It is not about access to knowledge that's important. It is about how do you know what is right from wrong, truth, fact from fiction, right? So, and in a world overloaded with so-called information, how do you distill? And how do you discern? Discernment comes with not just knowledge acquisition, but the application of value systems to knowledge. And the discovery is most critical for us as individuals and for us as a country, because discovery is about creating new value propositions in order to entrench our relevance in the global economy, to maintain our competitiveness as an individual. So distill, discern, and discovery. So how do you do this? I take a simple example. How do you make sure that cognitive development is not outsourced? And that requires us to have new methods of learning, assessments, and feedback. So I give an example. In the past, you may find that whoever can manipulate, juggle all the information available has a superior advantage. Just as once upon a time, before machines came about, the size of the biceps determines one's competitive advantage. Then after machine power comes about, the cognitive prowess becomes that competitive advantage. But that cognitive prowess today is also being challenged by many of these AI models. But then there's a new dimension that's required, and that is a creative process. The ability to create something new. Now, is this something new? I would say not entirely. I always share this story of my time in Cambridge doing my third year economics final exams. Economics students generally all know that the Cambridge exam is 3 hours, 4 questions, 45 minutes per question. You write what you need to write. But in Cambridge, I was always reminded of this paper. There's one paper, 4 hours, 1 question. You can write as much as you want or as little as you want. And if you write everything that is known, you probably just passed. Won't get very far. So you can have a topic called discuss inflation. Just 2 words. You can recite all you know from John Maynard Keynes to the Monetary School of Thought, Milton Friedman, to the Chicago School of Thought. And you can recite whatever, probably passed. Unless you have new insights. Okay, so this before AI, Google search. But assuming today you have the same question, discuss inflation, and you can probably ask a co-pilot, ChatGPT, and they will tell you all the known. They will probably be able to help you synthesize quite well the known knowledge. And if you do that for that same Cambridge exam, you'll probably maybe just pass, if at all, but you won't get very far. And I think that's how we need to challenge ourselves. I recently had a discussion with the NUS faculty sampling of professors, and I do this regularly across the university. I asked, how would you set exam questions with ChatGPT? Instead of thinking that your children and the students might go and use ChatGPT and plagiarize and outsource that cognitive development, can we set exam questions that make the assumption that they will use ChatGPT? In fact, we make it a requirement that you use ChatGPT. Then I still would like to distinguish the mere user of ChatGPT from the person who may use ChatGPT but create new value propositions, provide new insights. Now, that requires our teaching and assessment method to go one notch higher. But if we can do that, then I think the chances of what we call that cognitive outsourcing will be reduced. May not be eliminated, but this is almost a similar discussion that we had once upon a time as to whether children should be able to use calculators for their mathematics exam. But there's one difference between using a calculator and using ChatGPT. A calculator will give quite a deterministic answer. If you press 1 plus 1, chances are that it will tell you is 2, unless your calculator is wonky. Or it will tell you is 1 plus 1 is 10 base 2, which is still correct for those who know computer science. But if you use ChatGPT, it gives you a probabilistic answer. If you don't believe, it's a very simple trick to try. Whatever you ask ChatGPT, they will give you an answer. Then just type in the next question and say, are you sure? And the answer will instantaneously change. And you just ask one more time, are you sure? It will change again. Because the LLMs and the large language model works in a probabilistic way rather than a deterministic way. So I think there are things that we can do to make sure that our children have the strong foundation coupled with the dispositions to want to keep creating something new rather than regurgitating what is known, or otherwise known as using yesterday's answer for yesterday's questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. That was a great answer. I guess, in a way, paradoxically, AI might actually be raising the bar, if you will, for students to outperform.
Oh, I hope AI will raise the bar, because if we can't raise the bar ourselves, then we will be displaced by AI.
I'm going to open it up to the crowd right now. Maureen, I think a mic will come over to you. Just over there. Thanks.
Thank you. Maureen de Roy, I'm a council member of the Economic Society. You mentioned that AI is not a good thing for primary school. We've embraced it for universities here. What about secondary school? I'm asking this because I met with the Estonian Prime Minister, who in the 80s was Prime Minister, and he said computers need to be implemented in high school. And we've seen that country being the most digitized and have got tremendous runway because of it. So is secondary school something we think about for AI as well?
Sorry, let me clarify that. I don't mean that we don't apply AI in primary school. That's not true. Actually, today we have AI in every level of our school. But it is about the right dosage, the right exposure. So I'll give you an example. I visited one school. And this teacher was quite clever. What were the students doing? The problem statement was that the teacher asked the primary school kids to train the AI model to distinguish a sprinter from a marathoner. It's a quite interesting exercise. So the kids were supposed to feed the model with pictures of what they consider sprinter and marathoner, and then along the way, the final test was to make sure that the model, the program, can distinguish between a sprinter and a marathoner. So, I mean, you think about it, how will you do it? Primary school kids. Because in order to teach the model, if you like, you must first of all have in your mind some understanding of what distinguishes a sprinter from a marathoner. Is it the build? Is it the type of attire? Is it the environment that they run? Whatever it might be, right? So it's an interesting example. So in primary school, you use that to teach people certain basics, certain pros and cons of using it. When you come to secondary school, you will also use them for other purposes and perhaps at a different level. At our polytechnics, I went to one of our polytechnics, Temasek Polytechnic. They were using the AI to help their interior design students to do the interior design. And the AI will take half the time to generate the design compared to the past. But then they realized that, well, it did not necessarily save more time. They have many more options because then the art of it is how do you do your prompt engineering? How do you do prompt engineering so that you can evolve this? So the computer will generate whatever you want quite quickly. But in order for you to generate what you want, you have to ask the correct question and do the right prompt engineering. So it's a different skill set, but you learn different things at different levels. So I just want to be clear that it's not that we don't take the position as some other countries where it's binary approach, whereby primary school, no screen time, no AI, then there's suddenly sometime Cinderella, the clock struck 12, and then tomorrow everybody will learn. No, we don't do that. There's a gradual process of introducing AI and using AI at different levels with different focus areas. And that's how we want our people to be able to grow up comfortable in using this, but using this responsibly, ethically, and knowing both the potential and the pitfalls of using such technology.
Thanks, Mr. I'm glad the kind of capture technology only asked me to click on which one is a traffic light or a bus. I think if you ask me to choose which one is sprinter or marathon runner, I think I shall be in trouble. We have a question all the way at the back there.
Thank you, Dr. Kannan. Minister, good morning, and thanks for very reassuring remarks in the beginning. I want to thank Prakash for asking a most important question, and I'm glad that he made it his second question, that was on resilience. Minister, I want to talk about societal resilience. How are we preparing society for a time when a person who comes out of university with an MBA and in 2 years faces 2 layoffs for no particular fault of theirs or lack of anything else? It's just that things are moving so fast. Now, you led people in the army, and I'm sure you have a very good feel for how to build resilience in people. But when it comes to society, how are we doing it? Are we doing enough in the workplace to give people reassurance about their jobs and their employment, and giving them a sense that aside from robust feedback, they also have sponsorship within the workplace? And would you say that this is important for many life choices going ahead, including key things like marriage, having children, and buying a house, all of which feeds back into society? Thank you.
Well, I'll start off with what we always say in NTUC, and for us to have perhaps the right perspective in Singapore. In Singapore, we can never protect the jobs, but we protect the workers. There's a difference. In many countries, they try to protect the jobs. The jobs will come and go. The workers' employability is most important for us. How do we make sure that our workers remain employable? It's not just about training them on a specific skill sets for particular jobs. Many of the things that we do nowadays, from what's happening in our school to what's happening beyond the school is what we call the Metaskills. I have this question that I've always asked my university students, polytechnic students, ITE students. I say, what's the most important thing that you'll learn in your respective courses? What's the most important thing that you learn? Is it the technical skill that is related to the course? If that is the level of learning, then I would agree with you that, well, then we have to be quite prepared that we will be displaced sooner rather than later. Actually, the most important skill set we want our children to learn in school, in the foundational years, is learning to learn. Learning to learn on your own. Because you need to have that kind of disposition, that kind of confidence, that kind of curiosity and desire to say that I want to keep learning for life. This is what we call a meta skill set. It transcends any subject matter that you might be learning. And that is important for us because we cannot protect each and every job, but we can protect each and every worker by equipping them with the skill sets to learn, by enabling them to learn, by supporting them to learn. Of course, for adult learners, the learning is quite different from going back to a school. In fact, the model is not about going back to the school. It's about enabling them to learn anything, anytime, anywhere. How do you package the material such that they keep learning for life? So that's the first part. Then you talk about societal resilience. One of the important things about societal resilience is to have frank conversations with our people to help them understand the choices and options that we have, and not give people false hope and pretend that the problems will go away just because we do what other people do, whether to have more protectionist measures in different guises or industrial policies or otherwise, but to let people know the real challenges and at the same time give them the assurance that so long as we work on this together, we will be able to overcome the challenges. This is not something new. This is something that Singapore has been doing all these years, and I hope will continue doing for many more years to come. This is what distinguishes us from other societies. We don't shy away from the difficulties that we are facing. We don't shy away from the challenges that we are facing, but we constantly ask ourselves, how can we help our people to overcome the challenges together? So being frank and upfront with the challenges and coming up with real substantive policies that help our people adjust. So you look at some of the policies that we have enacted recently. It is the same philosophy about individual responsibility coupled with societal support. But we do not do what other people do and introduce what we call perverse incentives or moral hazards into a system whereby people either feel hopeless because no one is helping them, or people feel that they outsource their responsibility to the state as if someone will take care of everything. It's neither of these extremes. In Singapore, the social compact is always about individual responsibility coupled with societal support. And that is how we move together. And when we move together, it gives us confidence and it helps us to build that resilience necessary. Of course, there's another part of the resilience, which is more on the economic aspect, which is how you diversify your economy. So you make sure that we are not narrowly focused on certain sectors that can be easily displaced by other people based on cost or other advantages. But instead, we create competitive advantages that are sustainable based on our own unique value propositions. So these would be the three things that I would say how we want to make sure that we maintain the social cohesion and resilience, making sure that we help our people upgrade themselves throughout life, making sure that we are upfront with our people on the challenges while giving them the assurance that we can overcome this together, and making sure that our economy is diversified with competitive advantages that are sustainable and resilient.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think we have time maybe for one last question. Or we have two. Well, maybe we can take both, and then Minister can join the answers. Anyway.
Good morning, Minister. I'm Benjamin Lau. I'm the chairman of the Young Professionals Wing of Economic Society of Singapore. For myself, I've been working for around 5 years already, 5 years in the workforce. And my question is something regarding that AI will never take away from us, and something you have alluded to in the previous question. Something I realize in my daily work now is I use a lot of soft skills such as empathy, relationship building, understanding culture, authenticity, building social capital. And these are skills that I use on a daily basis. And when I transited from a student to a working professional, I struggled with learning that a bit. So my question was maybe, how can the Singapore education system assist with this transition from a student, to building this, as you mentioned, a good foundation of soft skills, moving towards working life? Thank you.
Thanks, Benjamin. Maybe we'll take the other question as well.
Minister, thank you for your time. I think my question is related, but a more personal angle, because Minister, you've been in the army, social work, NTUC, MTI, as well as education. How do you teach us how you learn to learn? Teach us how you transit so many different portfolios. I think that you might have faced the challenges, the struggles, perhaps mistakes. Maybe share with us so that you can encourage us how we transit in our careers as well.
Okay. The first one. So it's true. I always say that in Singapore, it's not about high tech that is our competitive advantage. It is high tech combined with high trust and high touch. That is our competitive advantage. What does high trust and high touch mean? Very simple example, right? Investment banking. AI can help you crunch all the data and prepare your presentation to the client. But whether your client will put the money with you depends ultimately whether your client trusts you, right? I think so far none of us invest our portfolio based on AI. Otherwise, Prakash might be out of a job. Right? And then we don't have to have a GIC altogether, right? But it's never like that, right? Because at the end of the day, the AI, the tech can only get you so far. It helps you to crunch various data. It helps you to aggregate the information. But at the end of the day, you need people like Prakash who can make recommendations based on experience and judgment. Because if everybody used the same AI model and everybody used the same answer, I'm not sure that we will beat the market. And I'm not sure our GIC or MAS or Temasek will come back with the sterling results that gives us 20% of our budget, right? So I think then the question is, how do you make sure that we have this type of skills where we have this, what we call the high touch and the high trust? Well, there are a few things that I can suggest for all students in the school, that instead of chasing from 95 marks to 96 mark, which is a marginal increase, spend a bit more time with your friends, talking to them, playing with them, learning about them. And important life skills. Spend a bit more time on your CCA, because these are important life skills. You need to be interested in people. You need to spend time to understand people deeply. That is not just a personal attitude. It must also be our national attribute. How can we be the bridge builders, the integrator in a fragmenting world? We can only do so if we deeply understand other people's fears, concerns, and aspirations, which means that we need to spend time there. This is why we encourage our students to go overseas, not just to go to the well-trodden path, but to go overseas, truly understand how people think, how people see issues, so that in time to come, we can value add by creating that value propositions that bring different parties together. By now, NUS, NTU, SMU, they will know. I have given them this challenge. Maybe it's an order that I've given them this challenge that don't just go overseas to the well-trodden path. Actually, I don't very much care where you go, but I've given them this challenge. When you come back from overseas, don't need to write very long report. Just tell us one thing. Every student that go overseas, just come back and tell me one thing that all of us don't know. This would be a good culture to have. I learned this from another country, where their students, during their gap year, gap month, whatever it is, they will always go to a place. They don't ask, where have my friends been? They ask, where have my friends not been? Because every one of them want to come back with a value proposition that distinguishes them from the rest. But you need to spend time to understand people, whether it's in Southeast Asia or anywhere else in the world. And that really allows us to stand out in even an AI, in a world where AI is dominant. And then we can build the high touch with the high trust. The high trust also comes with the rules the rules that we have and how we inspire in other people to trust us for the long term. In a very uncertain world that Prakash talked about, everyone is looking for some certainty. Everyone is looking for an investment environment where people can put their money for the long term. And in Singapore, if we get our fundamentals right, we have that competitive advantage. Not many places in the world today can say that they have this. But I think we have as good a chance as anyone else, perhaps even a better chance than most, to say that we can offer this environment whereby if you put your money here, if you put your investment here, you can be rest assured that we will keep our promises and deliver. And that is not just because we say it, that's because we demonstrated through our action. I take two examples. In the 1970s oil crisis, we had oil refinery here. Many countries nationalized the global multinational corporations' capacity for their short-term benefit. We never took a single drop of oil that didn't belong to us. And because of that, we established the reputation that you can trust us for what we promise. And that's how people have confidence to invest in the subsequent Jurong Island that we built. During COVID-19, we have companies here that produce masks. We were short of masks, but unlike many other countries, we never touched the masks that didn't belong to us. And after that, when people want to plant their new production facilities for the new generation of vaccines, we have our fair share of investments. We didn't promise people that we will give them the priority of the local market, because even if we have promised them that, they will not have taken us seriously, because our local market cannot outcompete other people's bigger local market. But instead, we promise them that when you put your investment here, you can be rest assured that you will always be able to service the regional and international market, come whatever challenges there might be. And because of our track record, people are more likely to believe us than otherwise. So a high-touch environment whereby we understand people deeply, a high-trust environment whereby we have the rule of law and we keep to our words. These are our man-made competitive advantages. How do I learn to learn? Well, very simply, I grew up in an environment, perhaps unlike today, where not everything is as well provided for. I think the first thing is that there must be an innate desire to want to learn, not just because you want to pass an exam or to score in an exam. One of the great privilege that I had was my mother was a cleaner. And because she used to clean some multinational companies, she brings back loads of disused magazines, newspapers, foreign international newspapers for me to read. So from young, I had a great privilege to read the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, The Economist, all free of charge. So you make the best of what you have. And when I got my hands on a set of Encyclopedia Britannica, at that time I think it was 22 volumes. I think the crowd today don't know what is Encyclopedia Britannica. I literally read every page of it, end to end. So I think the first thing is you must have the innate desire to want to learn, the curiosity. And a lot of people say, how can you ignite that curiosity? Last week when I was talking to the NUS faculty, I thought we frame it better. It is not about igniting that curiosity. It is about not extinguishing that innate curiosity in all our children who ask interesting questions and want to learn. So that will be what I call, I think, the first fundamental. The second thing, building up from that, is that I think all of us have agency on what we want to do with our time. You can spend all your time just doing what is required to pass the exam or to score well in the exam, but you would have missed the opportunity to distinguish yourself by learning something that you don't have. If all of us have this mental model that we all can learn something to distinguish ourselves rather than just scoring in an exam, then I think we will learn on our own. And another story from my Cambridge days. My Cambridge days, I can be quite proud because I can trace my lineage back to John Maynard Keynes. I am the 4th generation disciples. From John Maynard Keynes, he went to Joan Robinson, Jeff Harcourt, and Jeff Harcourt was my tutor. And I can quite proudly trace my lineage back. And in Cambridge, we were very proud to be learning about Marxian economics at that point in time. I wasn't very interested in Marxian economics. I was quite interested in game theory then and behavioral economics, or behavioral science, not behavioral economics. Behavioral economics didn't exist then. Some of my professors told me that, when you spend time doing such things, you won't come out in the exam. I was like, great, it's not coming out in the exam and I don't have to study this for my exam. I'll just go and do it. So I did, as per my whole life, I did the maximum number of subjects that just require me to pass or fail, and then I spent the rest of my time doing other things. And I thought, it's not too bad. When you have nobody to teach you and you have to learn on your own, then you learn to learn, right? Then you learn to learn on your own. But it starts from the innate desire that you want to have something that distinguishes you. And then it goes on with the fact that you make use of every opportunity to do something that you truly believe in. But at the end of the day, running big organizations, the other part of your question, running big organizations, leadership is not about, I am this type of leader and all you who come under my charge, you adjust to me. A good leader is someone who adjusts to the organizations. You adapt to the organizations rather than the organizations adapt to you. If you are a leader with only one management style, what I call a one-trick pony, then you won't go very far because everybody knows your trick. When we run different organizations, we need different skill attributes. Running the armed forces and MOE, large organizations, MTI as different organizations, the clock speed is different, the culture is different. But what is invariant in running different organizations are as follows. Number one, never put yourself ahead of the organization or the people under your charge. Don't love yourself more than you love your mission. Number two, if you take care of the people under your charge, the people will take care of the mission. But you try taking care of the mission without taking care of the people, won't go very far. Number three, perhaps in our whole life, we have come to learn this from my time in my CCA Scouts till today is, when you are around and the job is done, we shouldn't be too impressed. When you are no longer around, when we are no longer around and the job is still done or done better, then perhaps we can say that we have succeeded. So if we have some of these underlying beliefs, then I think it doesn't really matter which organization we are running, because every organization we go in, we ask ourselves, how can we take care of the people so that they can take care of the mission? How can we value add to the culture that is already built from where they are, rather than to restart and assume that all that is there is not valuable. I am generally not a Western surgeon where we do amputation. I tend to believe that I'm more a Chinese medicine doctor practicing acupuncture. And if we get the acupuncture points correct, the energy will flow in the organization. So on that note, I thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy yourself for the rest of the Economic Society dialogue. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Minister. What a fantastic way to end the session. I had such high hopes for this session, and I think, Minister, you definitely exceeded that, and I think it was really been a real treat for the whole audience here. I don't think even a whole week with AI would have generated as much insights, I think, as we had with you. So can everyone please join me once again, a round of applause for Minister.